The 13th century Sufi poet Jalaluddin al-Rumi left us two mystical lines that might work as an epigraph for today. Let the beauty that we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Let the beauty that we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. I don't know if you think of what you've been doing here over these years as beauty exactly. Some of what there is to do as a citizen of any human community or institution is not, on the face of it, very beautiful. But beauty isn't a simple word, any more than community is a simple word. So on a day like this one, maybe you'd be willing to push the boundaries of its meaning deeper or stretch them wider. Maybe on this day of all days in your Williams career, you'd be willing to think about the confluence of place and people and work and time as constituting something that could be called beauty. Maybe from this vantage point, you'd even be willing to include struggle and uncertainty and even some forms of sadness as part of what could be called beauty. No, not all of it was beautiful. But let beauty be a name for what we have loved about the complicated life we've lived at the confluence of place and people and work and time. Let beauty be a name for what it feels like to be loved back by life itself. Let that be what we do. Let living life that fully, that candidly and courageously, that flagrantly be our work in days to come as it has been our work in these years. Let us always remember what it felt like to pause here together on this threshold between the gathering twilight of one particular day in our history and the pale, promising morning sky of another day, the next day. Pausing here to peer right through the heap of life-changing moments and utterly ordinary, almost unnoticed moments. Peer through all of that to the very heart of things. May the remembering, the pondering, the wistfulness, and the regrets, and the inspiration, and the reaching most of all. May the layered meaning and the poignant memory and the firm resolve, may it all be what we do. And may spending these few precious moments together in the presence of the towering mystery of all these things be a way of kneeling to kiss the ground. No, not the ground of this or any other particular zip code, this or any other community or institution, but to kiss the ground of being alive, the ground out of which we grow. May there indeed be hundreds of ways, 527 of them, for instance, to kneel and kiss the ground. Let the beauty that we have loved be what we do.
We will now read Psalm 15. This psalm discusses the importance of integrity and kindness in everyday life. As we make our way out to the postgraduate world, the words of this psalm remind us to remain considerate of the situations of others, to never turn away or ignore the suffering of others, and to do our part to help our neighbor, even if we get nothing in return. This psalm reminds us that this compassion is where our true strength lies.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagur be'ohalecha, mi yishkon behar kodshecha, holech tamim ufoel tzedek, v'dovar emet bilvavo. Lo ragal al lishono, lo asa l'rehu ra'ah, v'chirpa, lo nasa al krovo, nivza be'enav nim'as, ve'et yireh Adonai yichabed, nishba lehara ve'lo yamir. Kaspo lo natan baneshech, v'shochad al naki lo lakach, ose ele lo yamot lolam.
Who can rest in your tent? Who can stand on your mountain? The one who walks upright, does what is good, utters true words of the heart, and does not deceive with the tongue, who does no harm to a neighbor and never reproaches others, who sees crookedness for what it is and honors the truth that flows from you, whose word is firm even in difficulty, who gives asking nothing in return and does not seek advantage at the expense of the innocent. The one who lives in this way will never be shaken.
The next psalm we'll be reading is Psalm 100. This biblical poem represents an offering of thanks for God's continued presence in our lives. We thank God for creating the world in which we live, and we express our own desire to pass on this gratitude from generation to generation. We are reminded here that our Williams education has given us much for which we can be grateful. Mizmor LeTodah, Heriu l'Adonai kol haaretz, ivdu et Adonai besimcha, ba'u lefanav birnana. Deu ki Adonai hu Elohim, hu asanu velo anachnu amo, v'tzon marito. Ba'u she'arav betodah, chatzerotav bitila, hodu lo baruchu shemo. Ki tov Adonai leolam chasto, ve'ador vador emunato.
This is how you sing to God a thank you song. You join the symphony of the whole earth. In your gratefulness, you meet God. Voices echo joy in God's halls. In giving thanks, we engage God's blessings. We meet God's goodness here and now. God's encouragement from generation to generation. You are filled with joy serving God's purpose. You sound your own song as you do it, certain that God is being. We know that we are brought forth from God, both God's companions and God's flocks. Enter into God's presence, singing your own song, in grateful appreciation. Thank you, God, you are all blessing. In this world, you are goodness, yes, grace itself. This is the trust we bequeath the next generation.
In the passage we're about to hear, Paul addresses the church in Corinth, a messy group of humans trying to figure out how to live in community with one another. It's one of my favorite parts of the New Testament because I hear in it a truth not just about myself, but about my friends and my family and all the groups I find myself a part of, and the Williams community is no exception. I've met some of the most uniquely talented and passionate people over the past 4 years here in all of you. But what I'll remember even more than all that talent and passion is how, even though we've thrived and climbed as individuals, we all in different ways have needed each other.
Now concerning spiritual gifts, brothers and sisters, I do not want you to be uninformed.
There are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone.
To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another, faith by the same Spirit. To another, gifts of healing by the one Spirit. To another, the working of miracles. To another, prophecy. To another, the discernment of spirits. To another, various kinds of tongues. To another, the interpretation of tongues.
All these are activated by one and the same Spirit, who allots to each one individually just as the Spirit chooses.
For just as the body is one and has many members, and all of the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For one in the Spirit, we were all baptized into one body, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit.
Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot were to say, "Because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body," that would not make it any less a part of the body.
And if the ear were to say, "Because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body," that would not make it any less a part of the body.
If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them, as God chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be?
As it is, there are many members, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, "I have no need of you," nor again the head to the feet, "I have no need of you." On the contrary, the members of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable.
God has so arranged the body, giving the greater honor to the lesser member, that there may be no dissension within the body, but the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it.
First of all, I apologize. English is not my first language. It's not even my second language. I would like to comment on verses 6 and 7 of Surah number 94 of the Quran, which translates as follows. Truly, where there is hardship, there is also ease. Where there is hardship, there is also ease. I found a lot of wisdom in these few verses. First, God is telling us, not once, but twice, that verily, where there is hardship, there is also ease. Therefore, when faced with adversity, we should persevere, endure hardships, and stand strong. As graduating students, I think we can all relate to moments of sheer stress when we doubt if we will ever make it. But here we are today. So verily, with every difficulty, there is relief. And as we move on to professional life or to graduate studies, or else. Indeed, there will be time of stress and self-doubt. During those moments, again, remember this message of hope and encouragement from God. For difficulties are lessons themselves. And if you look carefully and approach them differently, the solution or the reward often lies within the problem. The next two verses after these two ones, which are not on your program, go on to say that when you finally find relief, and you will find relief, do not be forgetful of your Lord. Show gratitude. Be compassionate with those who are less fortunate. Give hope. Thank you.
The following is verse 46 from chapter 18 of the Quran. Translated in English, it goes as follows. The prestige associated with wealth and offspring are allurements of the life of this world, but the things that endure, immortal good deeds, are best in the sight of your Lord as rewards and as the foundation for hope. This powerful verse serves three purposes. Firstly, it serves as a reminder that life is temporary and that one should be ever cognizant and ever aware of the afterlife during any of his or her acts in this life. Secondly, it serves as encouragement to believe that as long as there exists good, there still coexists some foundation for hope. And acts of courage, such as that displayed by the three heroes of Portland, Oregon on the 26th of May, namely the late Ricky John Best, the late Taliesin Murden Namkai Mechi, and Micah David Cole Fletcher, reassure that there is still hope and that the time we spend together in this life can proceed with love and respect for the small differences between us, surrounding the echoing similarity that each one of us is only human. Lastly, it serves as a seed for a very important question. In a world where everything blessed with life must also experience death, which of our acts can we make endure? Which of our acts can we make immortal? Thank you.
Billy Collins, our speaker, has made an art, perhaps almost a spiritual practice, of exploring life's particularities in his poetry and encouraging others to try for themselves. He's rightly known for his exceptional sense of humor, but it would be easy to overlook how much that skill of his depends on very serious work of listening and considering. A well-landed joke depends utterly on one's sense of one's audience. That is as true of his work on the page as it is of his live readings. And time again, he has shown an incredible talent for both perception and empathy, using his light touch to steer us into an unanticipated insight or confounded expectation, a new way of seeing, and ideally, a new way of thinking. We'll recite every detail of his resume for you tomorrow, holding your diplomas hostage while I read out the long lists of awards and recognitions he has garnered. But Billy isn't here this afternoon to apply for a job. We invited him here for his unparalleled ability to capture and enliven a moment, which makes him exactly the right person for this moment with us right now. Please join me in welcoming Billy Collins.
Thank you very much, President Falk, and it's great to be with you and to see the assembled hope for the future here. I don't want to put too much pressure on you, but I want to start by saying three quick things. First of all, it is a great honor to be here with you and to perform this service. Number two, I'm going to squeeze in a few poems. Don't even think about leaving. Even if you're by the door there. And third, this will consume about 16 minutes of your life. It's going to be a finite experience. So, when I was Poet Laureate, and that's one of my favorite ways to begin a sentence, so I'll start all over again. When I was Poet Laureate, I was on the road a lot, giving readings at colleges and schools. And I want to tell you about one reading that I gave at a prep school in Los Angeles. I need to remind you of the time. It was around 2001, 2002. In our country, as it sort of is today, it was in a nervous and fearful mood. The attacks of 9/11 occurred just a few months after I was appointed Poet Laureate, and my term continued through the run-up to and the beginning of the Iraq War. George W. Bush was president, uncertainty was in the air. That's the background. So after my talk at this prep school, students could come up and have their books signed. One of them looked very serious, troubled, concerned as he waited online. I'm guessing he was 15 years old. When he got to the front, he said, "So you're the Poet Laureate, right?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Of the whole country, huh?" I said, "Yeah." He said, he was thinking hard, "So how many people would have to die before you became president?" So bless his heart. I told them I was not in the line of succession. He looked disappointed. And I signed his book and he turned to go. But I stopped him and I started counting and I said, well, if I were in the line of succession, about 254, this did not cheer him up. He left discouraged, but he left me flattered that someone, even a 14 or 15-year-old boy, considered me presidential material. Later, and by later I mean a few seconds, I realized that I would not make a very good president, too many meetings, for one thing, nor could I think of any poet I knew who would be a good fit in the White House. Maybe William's own Lawrence Robb. At least I could picture him pardoning a turkey every Thanksgiving. And I mean that as a compliment. But generally, poets are to politicians as water is to oil. The political mind and the poetic mind work in very different ways. When Henry James asked W.B. Yeats to write a political poem about the war, he responded with a poem called On Being Asked for a War Poem. Fair enough. The poem begins, I think it better that in times like these, a poet's mouth be silent, for in truth, we have no gift to set a statesman right. End of quote. Statesmen rarely listen to poets. They prefer listening to other statesmen, that is, people who speak their language. Politicians use rhetorical language to persuade voters, plus charm and guile to win over their peers. But the poet's voice is smaller, quieter, personal, and more intimate. The poet speaks in images, the picture language of things. And the poet asks nothing of you except that you finish reading the poem. Yeats' little poem continues and ends this way. He has had enough of meddling who can please a young girl in the indolence of her youth, or an old man upon a winter's night. End of quote. Yeats knows how to be inclusive, young and old, male and female, and he knows he's meddling with his audience. So let's not waste any time looking forward to the first poet president. It's hard enough to get a woman into the White House. I remember when I first read Shelley's Defense of Poetry, and he says in there that he calls poets the unacknowledged legislators of the world. I got out my highlighter and put unacknowledged in yellow. But earlier in the essay, Shelley admits the divide between poets and legislatures. He lines up the two groups across from one another under the banners imagination and reason. So I'm not trying to put a poet in the White House. I just think it would be a good idea to get some poetry into the White House and into everyone's house for that matter. And I want to tell you why. If one reads poetry for a long time, one cannot help construct out of that gathered experience a sense of poetry with a capital P, a creature made up of the cumulative force of many poems, let's even say the best poems. It doesn't take long to see that the creature called poetry has a kind of personality of its own. It has motifs, which we might think of as interests, and habits, which we might think of the forms of poetry, as well as obsessions and a number of bedrock values that it repeats insistently up and down the ages. All houses, whatever their color, and all people would benefit, I think, from allowing poetry to have an influence on their way of life. And that, for what it's worth, is my point, that poetry, taken as an aggregate, sets a good example for us, and particularly considering the year and the occasion for you, the graduating class of 2017. One of poetry's first desires is to bring us in closer contact with our subjectivities, our inwardness. If a novel wants to involve us with its characters, a poem wants us to get more involved with ourselves. Poetry wants to take us inward and downward into the stuff that makes up our sense of who we think we are, even though it might lead to a revelation of how wrong we've been on that matter. Picture the fiction writer looking in the windows of other people's houses. After all, to write a novel or a play requires some measure of interest in the lives of people other than yourself. Then picture the poet inside the house, looking out the window and telling us what he or she sees, and even what that might mean. The job description for a poet does not mention a consuming interest in the lives of others. In fact, if you're an only child, you're off to a flying start as a poet. Poetry leads to reflection, and reflection is the way the self becomes aware of itself. To have a close relationship with your inner self may be the most important and intimate affiliation you can develop in life. Poetry is interested in stimulating and solidifying that relationship. Many poets have come up with condensed definitions of poetry. Dante says poetry is things that are beautiful, things that are true, expressed in words that are beautiful. Charles Wright says poetry is language that sounds better and means more. The dancing of an attitude is another definition of poetry, as well as meaning that moves. But the only foolproof definition of a poem I know belongs to Henry Taylor, who wrote, "A poem is an arrangement of lines whose length is determined by some principle other than that of the width of the page." I'm going to say that again. A poem is an arrangement of lines whose length is determined by some principle other than the width of the page. Poems come in lines. Poets could be called homo linearium. And by habitually pausing at the end of every line, the poem insists that we slow down before it turns our attention back into the body of the poem, recirculating meaning. The poet regularly taps the brakes, making us check the pace of our reading. A good poem will resist so-called speed reading by getting in the way of it. Slowing down is a rare thing in a world that is suffering what one cardiologist called the hurry sickness. But slowing down is just what poetry wants you to do. We wouldn't feel the deceleration when reading a poem if we lived at the pace of poetry, but we live at a faster pace in a culture driven by information technology aimed at combining speed and volume so that there's hardly a place to pause without effort, hardly enough time to distinguish what is valuable from what is trash. As one observer put it, we are not being subjected to a flood of information. We are being subjected to a flood of insignificance. In this flood, can you make it to the riverbank to slow down, stop, breathe, and take in the moment? Poetry encourages you to do that. Poems are made of words, but paradoxically, poetry can put us in touch with silence. Prose fills the page, one page after another, whereas a poem occupies a discrete place on the page and often sits on a single sheet of paper. The unoccupied white space that surrounds the poem can be felt as silence, the absence of words. In fact, a good way to measure the impact of a poem is to listen to the silence it leaves behind when it's over. The deeper the silence, the better the poem. Think of a poem as a displacement of silence, and prose as a continuation of noise. I'm prejudiced. Here is a poem called Silence. There is the sudden silence of the crowd above a player not moving on the field, and the silence of the orchid, the silence of a falling vase before it strikes the floor, and the silence of the belt when it is not striking the child, the stillness of the cup and the water in it, the silence of the moon, and the quiet of the day far from the roar of the sun, the silence when I hold you to my chest, the silence of the window above us, and the silence when you rise and turn away. And there is the silence of this morning, which I have broken with my pen, a silence that had piled up all night, like snow falling in the darkness of the house, the silence before I wrote a word, and the poor silence now. So poetry with a capital P advocates slowing down and silence. Both, we might notice, key elements in the contemplative life, as well as practices recommended by people from Buddhists to cardiologists, from reclusive monks to poets like myself. In the School of the Sacred Heart in San Francisco, where I visited a few weeks ago, many classes begin with 2 or 3 minutes of silence. A teacher told me that the students grow to value the experience of communal silence. It does more than cause a break in the school routine. It creates a space, an espacio, they called it, for inwardness, for doing nothing. So if you take slowing down seriously, you might actually reach a state of doing nothing, also highly recommended in a society which prizes doing several things at a time. Multitasking, we call it. The Buddhists have another name for it, monkey mind. What I'm asking you to think about is not thinking. I'm delivering a little call for slowing down, for quietness, for stopping by woods, for mental randomness and daydreaming. The kind of moment that Whitman captures in the opening lines of Song of Myself. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. Taking the time to do next to nothing can become an interesting part of your life. But let me assure parents that are here, I'm not suggesting this as a full-time way of life. Doing nothing is not a good career choice. We all recognize the virtues of industriousness and productivity that have made this country what it is. But if you look at it carefully, there are dangers. The ant sets an example for us all, says Max Beerbohm, but it is not a good one. Another habit, shall I say that again? The ant sets an example for us all, but it is not a good one. Another habit we can take away from poetry is the fine art of paying attention to what is around us, particularly in the natural world, where we see more than just echoes of ourselves. Whether it's Elizabeth Bishop examining the scales on a fish, or Whitman with his spear of summer grass, we often find the poet writing about a visual engagement so focused that a way of seeing something becomes a way of saying something. In the Wordsworth poem about the daffodils, he writes, I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. By adding that second gazed, the poet's looking becomes sustained, mesmerizing. He achieves a kind of gazing to the second power. To follow the example of poetry means staying open to the gifts of sight and responding to them with moments of intense looking. And that does not happen without slowing down, making it out of the flood onto the riverbank to watch the world go by. It is by such sheer acts of concentration that we wake up to the miracle of our existence. It is by such sheer acts of concentration that we wake up to the miracle of our existence. A miracle which easily gets lost in the daily rush of things and in the revolving wheel of habitual behavior. This basic awareness of our being is commonly sacrificed to social media in particular, which keeps us busy building then sustaining a virtual self that exists only on a two-dimensional screen. The screen is always there waiting for you, but nature is not. Nature, as Annie Dillard said, is a now you see it, now you don't kind of affair. And this is another short poem which simply piles up a set of observations that is describing a certain time of day. The title is In the Evening. In the evening, the heads of roses begin to droop. The bee, who has been hauling her gold all day, finds a hexagon in which to rest. In the sky, traces of clouds, the last few darting birds, watercolors on the horizon. The white cat sits facing a wall. The horse in the field is asleep on its feet. I light a candle on the wood table. I take another sip of wine. I pick up an onion and a knife. And the past and the future, nothing but an only child wearing two different masks. The late James Tate wrote that poetry is everywhere. It just needs editing. All of us have access to the picture language of the natural world if we care to notice. We all have the capacity to become what Emerson called a transparent eyeball. I think my little poem about the evening as making an effort to have something in common with lots of other poems that convey a reverence for the present moment, in the hope that bearing witness to the things around us will show the past and the future to be phantoms, false faces that haunt us with regret and apprehension. And yet our tendency is to drown out the present with memories from the past and anticipations about the future. Being always in the present is not possible, or it's possible only for a small population of people. But I'm suggesting that we keep open the possibility of visiting the present. And if that becomes your habit, you will see that the distance between the present and the radio of your thinking begins to shrink. Of course, to start thinking about the ever-vanishing present is to confront a paradox. It's difficult to feel that you're actually in the present moment, yet we are there at all the time. There's really nowhere to go else but here, where you are at this moment. Again, paying attention to the details around us, a fence post, a watering can, a tangerine on the table, can slow us down, reduce clamor to silence, and heighten our awareness of the present. Many poems, I think of them as nothing more than reports from the front lines of observation. Poets trying to tell you what they saw so carefully that you will see it too. Even a poem that recounts an episode from the past exists in the present of its being read, just as it existed in the present of its original composition. So paying sustained attention to things can be a kind of prayer, inevitably a prayer of gratitude. I remember when I was a child, whenever I would pout or whine or say I'm bored, my mother would always tell me the same thing: get down on your knees and thank God for your eyesight. And that was done in my room. I didn't understand what she meant then, but I get it now. If you think I'm suggesting you follow the way of the poet and make staring at things and daydreaming a part of your everyday existence, you are correct. Wordsworth called this state of mind wise passivity, wise passivity. He knew that slowing down or mental grasping after meaning sets the table for all sorts of new perceptions. Imagine seeing clearly what has been right under your nose all along. A partner in a law firm that I know once told me that he advises his associates to sit quietly and do nothing for a while when they're trying to find a legal fix for a client's problem. The hard part, I'm guessing, would be billing the client for time staring out the window. Here's one more thing about poetry, with a capital P. Values that we can consider adopting as we move through the world are hidden in poetry. Poetry has long provided a home for ambiguity and ambivalence. Only bad poems have their minds made up from the start. Better poems present a dilemma without solving it, two roads diverging without a clear way to choose. By avoiding simple answers, good poems provide an alternative to the reductionist trap of dialectical thinking, in which one side embraces the other in a grim dance of opposition: Republican versus Democrat, Christianity versus Islam, and countless standoffs on issues ranging from immigration to the environment. These battles should be waged conscientiously, especially in the challenging times we find ourselves. But the mind need not be limited only to that kind of dualistic thinking. Poetry thrives on paradox, ambiguity, ambivalence, conundrums, mixed meanings, and mixed feelings. We certainly don't want ambiguity in the assembly instructions we get from IKEA, nor do we want it in a White House press conference. But in literature, ambiguity thickens the texture of a poem by recognizing layers of truth. W.H. Auden had it right when he described poetry as the clear expression of mixed feelings. And the driving force behind all the recommendations I have made is the oldest, most pervasive theme in lyric poetry that you've probably seen written on the blackboard or whiteboard or whatever color boards are now many times. And that is carpe diem, seize the day. Whether it's Andrew Marvell or Charles Bukowski, poems from all centuries urge to live us more fully, more energetically, more vividly, to carpe the diem because our diems are numbered. This is the reason to slow down, to pay attention, to be silent sometimes, and to flavor ambiguity, because life is too short to do otherwise. As Philip Larkin wrote, of each other we should be kind while there is still time. By the way, a longtime New York Times obituary writer, speaking of death, was recently asked in an interview if her job influenced her way of looking at things. Yes, it has, she replied. I now divide everyone I see into two groups, the dead and the pre-dead. So if you can hear me, you're in the latter group for now. Annie Dillard again, quote, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. If you spend your days seeing life through the lenses of your own mortality, if you let yourself be blessed by the natural world, if you turn slowing down in silence into necessary pleasures, if you prefer ambiguity to pat answers, and if being alive in the world fills you sometimes with wonder and gratitude, then you will live a better life than you would if you did not do those things. That I can promise. And maybe you will learn to wake up like Salvatore Dali, who remarked on what an amazing joy it was to wake up every morning and realize he was Salvador Dali. I'm going to end with a poem, but not before I wish you all good luck in your future. There'll be enough of that tomorrow. Your speaker will, I'm not sure what he'll say, of course, but he'll probably point out that the past is behind you and the future lies ahead. And that turned out to be true, actually. So I'll leave you with this poem. And it gathers, I think, together a number of the things I've been talking about. It's called The List of Ancient Pastimes. And it's sort of, you can think of it as a poem about how people entertain themselves before Facebook, or television, or lots of things. So we start in prehistory here. The list of ancient pastimes first must have come listening to the wind, or regarding the movements of animals, then monitoring the stars, and sometime after that, scrutinizing fire. But somewhere in there belongs watching the progress of a river from an elevated bank, studying the pooling near the edges, the way the smoothed or rippled currents divulge the secret contours of the unseen bottom, and the effects of skylight on the surface, all the elongated colors of the flow. Today it is my turn on the shore. I flatten the tall grass with my pacing. I lock my elbows and lean back, listening to the liquid rush. I scribble in a notebook, drink from a bottle of water, and I find a perfect stone and fling it out into the middle. And sometimes I see something being carried down, a cracked off branch, a bucket on its side in the late afternoon, or as the dusk gets heavy, the head of Orpheus bobbing along, singing softly to the overhanging vines, or the body of Ophelia held up in her voluminous outspread clothes, the light so faint now, it is difficult to tell if the red and yellow petals are embroidered into her gown or real, floating with her on the darkness of the water. Good luck.
I'd like to start by thanking Billy Collins again for a really wonderful, wonderful address. What I was basically going to say was that the past is behind us and the future is ahead, and sit down. Maybe I'll say a little more than that. But so commencement tomorrow is something which is both stillness and motion. It's both this special moment in your life, and it is itself your headlong rush through that very point. So 5 years ago or so, you were somewhere else. You were laboring first through your college applications, then you were staring at your mailbox, or actually you were staring at your inbox, wondering if that decision letter was ever going to come. And since you're all here today, the letter finally arrived. And after it did, someone skipped the track forward 4 years, and now here you are, exhilarated and dazed, a little breathless, wondering how quickly it went by, while also obsessing maybe just a bit about what lies ahead. And as you get older, every single day is going to feel that way. It's why old people like me walk around looking a little bit distracted, wondering where the time went and how there can be so much left to do. But we are also in control of time a little. We can't stop it, but we can slow it down. And let's do that right now. Let's pause and breathe and reflect on the road that has delivered each of you up to this point. So when we're doing that, here are some things to reflect on. What you learned over the last 4 years and how you learned it. How you spent your time and who you spent it with. What it means to spend that time in a place that's bounded by mountains under a very fickle sky. You could have studied somewhere else, and you might have become someone else, but you didn't. You came here and became the particular person that you are. Now, I'm grateful to have known you in your time of becoming particular, and I'm especially grateful for the chance to see you here today, poised for one last moment before you pitch headlong into your next phase of becoming particular. Wonderful as this moment is, it's also imperfect. Just as every generation has always done for every succeeding generation, we're launching you into a world that is surely less than we wanted it to be for you. Human society is, I believe, perfectly imperfect. It's your privilege as a new graduate to see its perfectibility, and ours as your elders to see that perfection as an impossibility. And you're about to embark on a stage of your life in which you discover how both of those perspectives can simultaneously be true. Williams has prepared you for that experience. Your ability to thrive will depend on your capacity for listening and considering, analyzing and learning, and then sometimes unlearning, reconsidering, and evolving. Remember that at Convocation last fall, I summarized 5 principles from Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, and his remarks to our 2016 graduates. They included being steadfast and strategic, seeking allies, even imperfect allies, and doing your homework about the issues. They also included listening, especially to people you disagree with. And finally, knowing your audience and working out how to make yourself understood to those same people who may think and feel and live differently from you. Do you remember that? I hope you do. And because part of my charge of you today is to remember those skills and apply them well, no matter where you end up or whatever particular person you become. In a similar vein, tomorrow's commencement speaker, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, wrote in her novel Americana, "If you don't understand, ask questions. If you're uncomfortable about asking questions, say you are uncomfortable about asking questions, and then ask anyway. It's easy to tell when a question is coming from a good place, and then listen some more. To succeed in this life, you are going to have to do these things, and in some ways, you are off to a super start. The work will require you to create and communicate. And fortunately, those talents have been cultivated in your generation to a degree that I never thought possible. But you're also going to have to listen, to ask without presuming the answers, to be present without taking action. The world has, in my opinion, tried to train those abilities out of you, almost as thoroughly as it is drilled in your creative talents. But Williams has tried to reintroduce them to your lives. And while that effort may not always have been welcome at the time, I hope that over the course of your life, the resulting skills will serve you well, like the uninvited guest who, after enough time passes, settles in and becomes part of the family. Across history, listening and being present have been among the hardest things for humans to do. We know you are absolutely capable of them, but to accomplish them, you are going to have to overcome not only a long history of human impatience, but also, these days, a world designed to reward action and reaction over tolerance and consideration. And so here we are, present in this complex moment and also hurtling headlong through it. And just to complicate these things further, we are also coming at this point from very different angles and viewing it each in our own ways. Where I see complexity, you may see possibility, and progress, maybe even perfectibility. Such profound differences might make the situation seem hopeless. But here's the thing, I'm not a pessimist. I'm actually a physicist. And it's hard to believe. And physicists believe that beauty and joy are found in working as hard as we can together to understand our world. And each of us may contribute only a tiny bit of knowledge to that understanding. And it may not be immediately clear how those pieces fit. But physicists believe that over time, we will solve a great many mysteries together, and that the world may even be made better by what we find. And so again, as we pause here a while, each in the particularity of what we have become over the last 4 years, and each on our own trajectory, experiencing this moment from different angles, we should remember that we are all working as hard as we can to understand the world. And the true, full understanding we hope for is unlikely to ever be achieved by or reside in one single human mind. If it happens at all, it will happen in the confluence of many perspectives, in the confluence of many particularities. You've already experienced such synergy at Williams, perhaps without realizing it. Something unique and whole was created here by the summing of your presence and life with the presences and the lives of the people sitting around you right now. If you liked or respected each other, that contributed to the whole. And if you didn't, that also flavored the mix. Wherever you go next, you will have influence in the world, as you had here at Williams, about the particular kind of life you want to create and live in together. That choice itself is a privilege available to very few people anywhere. And so it also becomes your responsibility to exercise it well. So as we pause one last time in this particular moment, and also in the headlong rush toward tomorrow, please take a moment to decide what choices you're going to make and what kind of world you will create. And may this be the spirit in which you go forth tomorrow from the Purple Valley.
Prayer is simply a name for the leaning of the heart toward the light, toward the good that we desire, toward the well from which we replenish our hope. So as we have shared so much leaning together over these years, let us savor that spirit of ripened memory, quieted mind, and deepened attention in the leaning of our hearts together now, while we can still all be in the same place at the same time.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful and the compassionate. We are told in the Quran that God gave the human being a beautiful distinction, a unique capacity. For we were given the ability to comprehend not just with our minds, but with awakened hearts. We were given the choice to speak not only with our tongues, but through our acts of care and concern for one another. And we were given the choice to build, not simply shelter from the elements, but the foundations for just, peaceful, ethical societies. We inhabit this life not only with our brains and bodies, but with our souls and conscience. Imam Ali said, "You presume you are a small entity, but within you is enfolded the entire universe." In your quest for a life with meaning and lasting impact, may you find compelling power in the practice of kindness and gentleness. May you find strength through patience and resilience. May you find elevation through humility and modesty. May you find inexhaustible wealth through gratitude and contentment. May you find nobility through self-discipline and moderation. May you find wisdom through pause and deliberation. May you find transformation through embodying mercy and compassion. You are more than the sum of your degrees or status, for in your being is the potential to uncover faith, hope, empathy, courage, selflessness, love. If you choose to cultivate these gifts, they can inspire works that endure long after the titles and transient things of this world perish. May you discover your beautiful distinction so that you can apply the fullness of your lives and influence to serving the most vulnerable, the marginalized and voiceless, the victims of abuse and violence, the refugee, the orphan, the neighbor. May God's all-embracing peace be with you, your families, and all those you will uplift and care for. Amen.
O source of all blessings and of all mercies, we thank you for the breath that sustains us, for the food of the earth, our common home. We thank you for the mystery of creation, for the beauty all around us that our eyes can see and our hands can touch, for the joys that fill our hearts, for all that draws us beyond the definitions of ourselves. We thank you for our families that have nurtured, encouraged, and supported our becoming. We thank you for setting us in this community, for the company of friends we have found here who love us by choice, for our companions in the noble work of this place that share our burdens and our daily tasks, for the faculty and staff that welcomed us as strangers into their midst and so deftly attended to our growth, for the people from lands other than our own that have invited us to expand our understanding of the world. We thank you for the quiet moments of reflection when in stillness and silence our hearts have recognized that your grace is more real than rocks and rivers and trees, that it is your freely given gift, not politically or synthetically produced, nor bound by religious creeds or well-crafted constitutions, a gift that eludes captivity from hardened prejudice and faulty perspectives. Your grace emanates unexpectedly, always an event, an experience, an encounter that engenders a peace which cultivates the wonder that ensures that every day is extraordinary and every person we meet is special. Therefore, let us cry out full-throated and unsparingly, thank you. Thank you.
Holy Mystery, as we pause to name gratefully the gifts that surround us here, give us wisdom and courage enough to imagine a new time beginning tomorrow, to which each of us in our own way can be a gift. Time after time we have wondered at this world, the integrity of Earth, the intricacy of its systems, and the imperfections of our own. We have grieved the ravaging of the environment and immersed ourselves in the labors of science and of art to save it, to a planet that still awaits the ratification of our commitment. Give us as a gift. Day by day, we have felt the care of those who labor around us and on our behalf, the skill of hands that have nourished our bodies and maintained our living spaces and looked after our records, the discipline of the minds that have given us tools to shape our thinking, the steadfast love of family and friends who have believed for us what we have not always been able to believe for ourselves. These gifts have been our daily bread. To a human family that hungers for such nourishment as this and still cannot be fully confident that it will find what it needs to sustain life, give us as a gift. Over and again, we have watched as the scourges of war and want have distorted identity and imprisoned hope. Injustice and corruption, greed and indifference have twisted the noblest image of humanity to a world where there is sometimes so much to fear and so little to trust. Give us as a gift. Give us ears for the questions. Give us hearts for the answers. Give us bread for the journey. Give us impatience for the beginning. Give us hope for the end. For we are bold to ask these things and eager to offer these things in the name of all that is holy to each of us alone and all that is sacred to all of us together. Amen.
May you be instilled with the courage and conviction needed to accept new challenges, embrace unexpected opportunities, cultivate peace, and foster always and everywhere an enduring sense of goodwill. And may grace and peace be with you all, and those you love, and those whom you must serve, wherever you may find yourselves, both now, in this moment, and in all the years to come. Amen.
May the source of mercy inspire you to become caring, compassionate stewards of the earth's delicate resources and in service to the well-being of all people and all creation. May the source of peace make you one who comforts and uplifts those who struggle and suffer. May the source of guidance help you deploy your hearts, minds, and hands to the efforts that heal and reconcile and inspire. May the source of light make you a luminous light onto your communities and our world. Amen.
Dear friends, may the places in which you find yourself bless you. Places that are different enough from this place to make you remember the mark that this place has left on you. May you draw strength from the beauty of this place for all the living that you will do in all the places of your life. And may the work you take on bless you. Work that is your work, to which you can bring your full mind and your whole heart. May you draw confidence from the work that you have done here to nourish all the work that you will do after you leave here. And may the time that will be yours bless you. Time that will recall this time, but that will always be new. Time that will stir your conviction and reward your hope. May you draw wisdom from the time you have spent here to guide you in whatever time may lie ahead of you now. And as you go from this place, leave behind this work and remember this time. May you believe that you can be a blessing to the places you go, a blessing to the people you meet, and to the work that you will take on, a blessing to the time that you have been given, even as you have been a blessing to this place and these people and this work and this time. May the holy and indelible blessing that is upon you now go with you and abide with you and encourage you tonight and tomorrow and always and evermore. So, even as the sun sets on one chapter, the dawn of the next is upon us. Let us enter into it wholeheartedly and in peace. Peace be with you. Namaste. Salam alaikum. Vaya con Dios. Pax vobiscum. Shalom aleichem. Go with God. Alleluia. Amen.